What's up, everybody? Welcome to Make Things Tiny. My name is Mig. Prefab homes, which are homes that are made in a factory, are becoming more popular, and they're an integral part of the tiny house industry as people continue to sort of push the boundaries for design and innovation, and also what you, consumers, want. So today we're talking to Nick. Nick is the owner of Nanabode. Nanabode is a design firm, so Nick has a background in architecture, and they've also partnered with Prefab Pads in Chicago to create their Nanapods, which are 288 and 430 square foot homes. They're really beautiful, as you get to see a sneak peek here, but make sure you watch to the end because Nick's going to talk to us about his background, why he created the company, and you'll get to see more of an extended tour of the different homes that they've designed and the different options that they have for those of you who might be watching and interested in buying your own nanopod. So I'm excited for you guys to learn more about Nick. Make sure you subscribe and let's get into it. So I'm here today with Nick. Nick, thank you so much for being on the channel. Nick is the owner of Nanabode. I'm super excited for you to talk to us just about your experience and just get a sense for what you think about the tiny house industry. If you don't mind just talking a little bit about what got you interested in tiny homes and why you decided to start your company, and then we can just kind of chat from there.
Yeah, sure. Mick, thanks for having me on. Why did I get into tiny homes? I've been an architect for 30 years. Tiny homes has always been a fascination of mine. Architects tend to not get into something so small because it's just not. It's more difficult to make something like that work financially. But I've always been interested in tiny homes, both for myself and as a as a folly. And I think that probably attracts me the most to it is that kind of like a car, designing a car, you can put together this little perfectly designed thing that you spend a lot of time putting together. You make all the parts work really well, and then you can manufacture it multiple times. And as you're doing that, maybe you're making some tweaks to it and making it even better. But something that functions on its own and just really works in a lot of different situations, a lot of different environments. And that's been the appeal to us. We started our company 2 years ago, and the initial thought was to create designs that people could use to replicate. So these are construction drawing sets. But in recent months, we have evolved into partnering up with a factory and creating 2 of our designs in the factory.
No, that makes sense. I feel like that's a really exciting thing to do either way. There's definitely a need for people to have just the plans. I know that that's something that kind of eases things for people because it can be a little bit, I guess, overwhelming. If you think, I want to go tiny, I want a tiny house, but you have no idea. Like, there's so many pictures on, social media. There's so many different options you can choose from and play around with when it comes to design. But it's really important to think about functionality when you're designing a home. So I think you're doing some of the hard work for people by giving those plans out, and I think that that's really a really important part. I think that's something that I've seen, definitely more companies are doing that, sort of creating, plans that people can just use and then just bring it to a builder. So I see where that would be really, really valuable for people too. I know you mentioned like that it's not necessarily like it's not something that most architects would get into. Like, why is that? Like, what is it about smaller homes that would make it less appealing for an architect? That's just something I'm just curious about because I don't really understand that myself.
Well, I mean, the bigger stuff is easier to make a living off of. That's
Okay.
and we're trained to do bigger things. To do. But most training in school is not through for single family residences. It's more for
Oh.
commercial work. We have a passion for custom residential design, and we've been doing it for years. But as the world becomes less and less affordable,
Mm-hmm.
we started looking at smaller and smaller designs. We started looking at backyard ADUs, backyard garage apartments and guest houses, and stuff like that. And that's really what our pre-designed work was geared toward, is that you can buy a nicely designed set of plans, hire yourself a builder, and we can help with the permitting, and it gets put in your backyard. But then we started evolving into the prefab stuff, because there's certain cases maybe where that makes sense. Maybe you're in an environment where you don't have easy access to skilled labor. The construction times take forever.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're building in a factory, you're building at a set price. Whereas if you're building these tiny homes, yeah, I mean, it can vary throughout the country. And builders, they charge a premium for very small houses. By building in a factory, you don't have so much of that.
Okay. I didn't know that. So that's helpful for me to know. That's definitely helpful for people watching to know, because there has been a shift more towards like prefab homes, and that's not necessarily what people would consider like a traditional tiny home. So I think that as that sort of continues to evolve, like I know like you're partnering with Prefab Homes, they're a pretty big company. I think it's helpful for people to understand the differences between some of the costs that they might experience if they choose to go just like a traditional tiny house builder route versus a prefab home. I know the designs look a little bit different too, but based on what I've seen, like from looking at your designs, like I think that it makes sense to me, especially for like backyard ADUs, but even for someone that wants to just live in it. Like they look really functional, they're super sleek, really modern sort of like designs. Looks kind of different from what you're going to get from sort of like the traditional tiny house market. So yeah, there's that piece up to it as well.
Yeah, you go into it with an avatar in mind. Architects, you can't just design within a vacuum. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we approached these, we thought, well, this is probably for it can be used as a short-term rental,
Mm-hmm.
or a couple, or and recently a retired person or something like that. And it's probably going to go in a place that has a view. So that's why we have all the glass. It's got to be self-sustaining, so it's got to be very energy efficient, and you have to be able to live in it. It's got to be
Mm-hmm.
practical. You have to have a full kitchen, bathroom, living areas, but it's expandable by tacking on additional units, or creating
Okay.
an outdoor space, or connecting multiple units with an outdoor space, a deck or whatever.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you can buy one, and then, maybe like in a year you realize you need more space, you can get another one and connect them together. Okay.
You can, and that's something new that we're working on. We have had some customers who have asked us that they have a certain, in a lot of places you have a minimum square footage requirement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about this recent customer that we have where they're in an area that has a 950 square foot minimum, and these are, our biggest unit is 430 square feet. So
Got it.
his plan is to tack a few together to make that work. And because he's in a remote mountain environment in Western North Carolina, the construction times he's been quoted 14, 16 months just to build a
Whoa,
tiny home.
that's a
Yeah,
long
and it's going
time.
to
Oh
be,
my goodness.
$400 a square foot, or $500 a square foot. And so he can get this built. We can build it in 10 to 12 weeks. During that time, he can be putting in his foundation, putting in his utilities. The foundation is just piers, so it's not usually too much. And then it can be shipped in, hooked up, and ready to go, theoretically, in a couple months.
Hmm. Okay.
So,
Wow, that's a huge difference in construction time. Yeah, that's something I've noticed. Like it does vary. Like I know that there's some builders that can build them in 6 weeks because they have the ability to do that. They have the technology, they have the facility, I guess they have like the people. And then there's other ones where, it might take you like 8 months to 12 months. So it really does depend on the person. If they need it right away, it's probably a better option to go to you all than, if they're buying it knowing they're not going to live in it for another year or two, then maybe they can work with a builder that has a longer build time. But With the price too, I think that's another piece to consider. I don't think that people realize that the price of the tiny house is relative to the builder that you choose. I think people assume that, okay, I've got a $70,000 budget to buy a tiny house. There's going to be like dozens of people to choose from, and that's just not the case. Maybe it was a little, a few years ago, but it's definitely not anymore. Do you know like what the price point is for the nanopods, and just sort of like, or I guess like the price point you hope to be at in the future, like if you're not sure what the actual price point will be?
Yeah, well, we do have pricing on our website, and the smaller nanopod, the studio unit is starts at $105,000. The larger, fully one bedroom unit is $165,000.
Hmm.
Um, we've gotten feedback that that seems high, that seems very affordable. It's all from a person's perspective.
Hmm.
If you're going to want a tiny home that's sub $70,000, you probably want something that's on wheels that is really tiny, and that's
Hmm.
just not an interest to us to design. There's other people that do that.
Hmm.
But what our market is, if you want something that is very well designed, very well built, um, and uh, uh, and you need it in a relatively short amount of time, 10 to 12 weeks, then that's where we fit in. The factory that we work with, Prefab Pads,
Sure.
they're located outside of Chicago, in Waukegan, Illinois. They're not a big factory, and that's part of the reason we chose them to partner up with. They can produce about 8 to 10 units at a time, but they're willing to do one at a time, which is
Hmm.
unusual for those bigger factories. So most of the ones that we've talked to want to do, their minimum order is 10 or 20. They're used to doing hundreds at a time,
Whoa.
and that's just, that's we're more interested in working with the individual who wants a couple.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And also I can see that being really like appealing for like a family or just a group of people that want to buy land together and they want to live on that land together. Maybe each one of them gets a pod, and maybe they get a deck, and they
Right.
get like another pod in the middle where they can do like, I don't know, like their gatherings and things like that. Like I feel like there's a lot of opportunities for like more like community living, or like shared like ownership for land, or also like multi-generational families sort of like living too, or where like they don't want to live in the same house but they want to be near each other, but then and they don't want to all buy $500,000 homes in the same neighborhood. Like that would be the alternative. It's either you go into a neighborhood and you buy, each one of you buys your own 4 to 5 or $700,000 house, or you could each buy your own $100,000 house. So I could see that being like really appealing for families.
Yeah, it's kind of expandable
Mhm.
as your family grows or as your situation changes. You could add on multiple ones, and that may be what we're heading to next, is to
Mhm.
see how flexible we can be with that. Maybe offering more units that well, we're limited in size, but may be more flexibility in the units that we offer. Um, there has been some interest in just a unit that doesn't have uh, much inside of it, so it can be used as a connector piece, or a unit that can be used as a podcasting studio, or
Yeah.
a sauna, or a gym, some things
Mhm.
like that. So you can start tacking on pods that are essentially rooms as part of your mini compound.
Yeah, like an office. I think that could work too. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities for people to use them for, different things in their
Right.
backyard. I mean, I have a lot of questions because I think your perspective is really interesting, like to me, from like the architectural side and the design side, looking at making it functional and like energy efficient. And I know we're probably seeing different things in the industry. So I was just wondering, what you think the future of this industry is, like tiny homes in general.
Yeah, I think that, like I have been talking about, flexibility is the future, to be able to use these pods to expand and uh, uh, make potentially bigger homes out of it as your living situation changes. I
Mhm.
also feel like there's going to be a lot more refinement that's coming up. So far, the technology for the pods for prefab housing has been mimicking the way we currently build. But I think that building in a factory gives you the chance to develop the construction technology a little bit more. And there are uh, companies that do that. I'm a little jealous of them because they're they're ahead of me on the curve. But um, they're not building out of 2x4s and insulation.
Mm. Okay.
We've taken the steps so that our units are made out of structural insulated panels, SIPs, as
Hmm. Hmm.
most people know, and that's a step in the right direction. But I think you could take that even further and um, build stuff out of light gauge steel, or
Okay.
develop the panels yourself. There's a lot of different ways to go, and I think that's the way of the future.
Is it that like the current way that people that we're building homes is it less cost effective? Is it not as great for the environment? Like what is it about it that I guess like you're saying that it would make sense to move away from?
Yeah, I mean, architects have been saying that for years, that
Okay.
the way we currently build homes is uh, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's because there's so many multiple components that come together. We're using wood, which is a renewable resource, but it is subject to uh, uh, termite damage
All
and
right.
mold
Yeah.
and water issues and things like that. Um, but the industry as a whole is difficult to change
Hmm.
because people are comfortable with what they know, and they'll continue to work that way. But if you develop these homes in a factory where you're controlling what you're specifically making, then I think there's the opportunity to change that and offer something that is head and shoulders above what the quality currently is. And the only limitation that you have is transportation, and that's where
Hmm.
multiple units can be tacked together, and that's helpful. Uh,
Can you
and
use
I'll go
the
on one tangent about
technology?
that, though.
Oh, yeah,
With the,
sure.
with the, with the, with the multiple units being put together, I do. Our company really wants to keep the integrity of the units themselves to act
Hmm.
on their own. Like a connecting piece is going to be a very, very small connection, very light connection, because we want to control we have created this tightly built product that we don't want to compromise by you know, having to work on the connections.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. No, I see where that would make sense. You don't want to lose any of the original aspects of the design or of just the pod itself. Is it more cost effective, or well, actually not cost effective? Like, can you build this at a larger scale? So when you're talking about the different materials that are currently being used to build homes, like if you were to build like something more commercial, can you use better resources as well too, or is this just for like residential homes or like even for smaller tiny homes?
Oh, if we were to change our model and build it at a bigger scale,
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, there's always economy of scale, and it does become
Okay.
cheaper. Um, but you're limited by what you can do. I mean, materials are still materials, and you can get them in bulk, or you can store them in the factory and be more efficient that way. But uh, it just costs a certain amount to build. And I wish we
Yeah.
could make it
Okay.
cheaper. We
Yeah.
can to a
It's
certain
yeah.
extent. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. That's the thing I wonder about, just because I can't tell what I guess what share of the tiny house industry or like the small living market is going to go towards like prefab or like modular homes compared to just like traditional tiny homes on wheels, which I personally don't see as which is I don't really see tiny houses on wheels being sustainable like in the industry itself. Like I don't personally think that they're going to be a much more like a big chunk of what people look for. Like I think there's going to be less and less people that look for a tiny home on wheels, which is just my personal opinion. I don't think it makes sense for the majority of people to go that route. I think what you're doing makes more sense for people. Like for an ADU, it makes more sense for multi-generational housing. If you're putting things on land, it makes more sense. So I'll be curious to see whether or not we'll see a lot more of these factories popping up and like people building tiny homes more in factories and then being prefab as opposed to one builder with like a group of people building like one custom tiny house on wheels at a time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just can't tell what's going to happen.
I mean, one advantage to not having wheels and putting it on a foundation is you can then create a mortgage, and you can't do that
Mm-hmm.
if it's on wheels. So
Yeah.
that would appeal to me if
Mm-hmm.
I was building it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think the cost is easier for people. I think it's easier for people to, I guess, wrap their head around spending $100,000 for a 400 square foot like home to them on foundation than it is to spend $100,000 on a house on wheels on a trailer. Like I think that's what it seems to me. This is based just on my experience and things that like I'm seeing or things I'm hearing, that it makes more it's easier for people to sort of like swallow that cost because the cost is going to be there either way. Like you're spending $100,000 either way. It seems like people are more like I guess less resistant to spending that $100K if they're getting something that looks to them more like a house, like it's wider, like and then it's on foundation. But
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing is that, and this is why we offer both prefab and a set of plans that you can build from,
mhm,
is that
mhm,
there's conditions where you can't deliver a house. If there's power lines in the way, or if you're in an
right,
urban neighborhood and you
yep,
can't get a trailer or a crane to your backyard, you're just gonna have to build it by hand
mhm,
in most cases, and that's why we offer the two different kinds of options.
mhm. That's a good point. I think I didn't think about that with like whether or not it can actually be delivered there. And yeah, urban spaces are a lot more dense and backyards are a lot tighter and there's not necessarily a driveway even for you to like be able to pull the trailer or like the truck through. So yeah, I don't know, I think it'll be interesting. I think it's a cool time to be in the industry and I think everything I think it's exciting, but I definitely think that it's shifting and it'll just be interesting to see which way it goes and what that looks like. But what you all are doing is definitely kind of in my mind at the forefront of what the industry is sort of like experiencing right now, like prefab, um, looking at like more like modern sleek designs, with the windows, kind of like floor to ceiling windows and just the design aesthetic and that sort of thing too. And honestly, even the price, because I think most houses most tiny houses, a lot of them cost 100K now too. So yeah.
If you can, like our one bedroom is 165K, but if you can get a house that you can live in for 165K, I think that's not bad. I'm sure some people will disagree with me, and some may love it, but
So I'm excited to see more microhome communities popping up.
yeah, me too.
They're doing
Yeah,
some really
once
cool
you
things
once you
with their
get a passion
design.
for this stuff, you find out about this stuff all over the place, and
Yeah.
it kind of goes under the radar sometimes, and then you find it, and you think it's really interesting to see all the different ways that people have um, they're solving problems. They're creating unique environments, but they're trying to solve problems of how do you live without a car, or
Hmm.
how do you live affordably? How do you have only what you need? That kind of there's a lot of
Hmm.
those things.
Yeah. No, it is definitely cool to see. It's a fun time because I feel like you do get to look up stuff I'm always like looking up to try to find new things and see what people are doing and try to, learn about where people are at and what they're thinking about for the future of housing. This is kind of where we're at, like trying to figure out like what makes the most sense moving forward, because we have a long list of things that aren't working for how we live our day-to-day lives, housing wise at least.
Yeah. And let me tell you, for so long, it's only been, the developers who build new homes will only build a certain size
Mhm.
and bigger. So if you want to live in something smaller, it's just not out there. But now it's starting to be that way. And you can create your own, or there's, like we were talking about, there's some communities that are popping up all over the place.
Mhm. Yeah. Cool. Well, awesome.
Great.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and chat with everybody. I'm excited for people to just learn more about you and to hear about your perspective, and they'll get to see a bit of a sneak peek, and they'll get to take a look at some of the designs that you have, like at the end of this video with the really cool animation. So I'm excited for people to see that too, and hopefully they reach out to you. Links to everything that you're doing will be in the video description. They can reach out, they can ask questions. Maybe find their new dream Nanapod, or at least their designs for their next tiny venture. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, Nick. Thanks. And I can't wait to see who else you have on.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks. All right, that was my conversation with Nick. I appreciate Nick taking the time to chat with us about their backstory, why they created Nanabode, their partnership with Prefab Pads, just some of their thoughts on innovation in the tiny house industry, design, and the housing industry in general. And I'm glad that you all were given an opportunity to sort of see the different designs that they have. So make sure you reach out. The Nanapods are really cool. They look really sleek. They're 12 by 36 for the 430 square foot one, so a little bit wider than some of the traditional homes, which I know some of you might be interested in. So make sure you reach out, check out everything that they're doing, and potentially find a Nanapod for you or for your family with the village concept. I like that idea as well too. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you're new, please take the time to subscribe. And if you're interested in learning more about sustainability and design, make sure you check out this video that I've got with Desiree from Simply Sustainable as well too. I'll see you guys in the next one, and don't forget to think tiny.